So, hello, welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in the first webinar of our Geothermal Industrial Parks in East Africa series. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and all participants are muted with their video turned off. My name is Derek Burke. I'm a Senior Program Coordinator at the United States Energy Association. I work on the U.S. East Africa Geothermal Partnership. To give a brief background on USEA, we are a nonprofit membership association of public and private energy-related organizations, corporations, and government agencies. USEA represents the broad interests of the U.S. energy sector by increasing the understanding of energy issues both domestically and internationally through capacity building activities and events like this one. If you would like to learn more about USEA and our work, I welcome you to go to our website at www.usea.org. We would like to thank our members and partners for their support in the energy sector during this difficult time. Each of us has felt the effects of this global pandemic, and we continue to work together to recover and come together stronger in the end. Today, we will be looking at how Iceland has been able to successfully leverage their geothermal resources to create industrial parks and the potential for using a similar model in East Africa. Iceland has become one of the first countries in the world to achieve 100% renewable energy consumption, of which geothermal claims a large percentage. Furthermore, industrial parks in Iceland have been extremely successful in using geothermal energy to drive economic development. Our presenters will explain how Iceland has been able to make this transition and what that could mean for East Africa. I'm happy to introduce our speakers today, Mr. Jón Örn Jónsson, who currently serves as the country manager for Reykjavik Geothermal in Ethiopia, and Sigurður Markússon, who works as the business development manager for Landsvirkjun, the national power company of Iceland. We will begin with a short presentation by each of our speakers and then move to a Q&A session. If you have a question, please use the chat and Q&A button below to submit your question. I will be receiving them throughout the presentation, and we will ask the presenters to respond after they finish their presentation. With that introduction, I would like to commence the first webinar on establishing geothermal industrial parks in East Africa, lessons from Iceland. I now hand it over to Jón and Sigurður.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you for providing us with the opportunity to speak a little bit about the lessons learned and the effects this has had to the Icelandic society. We would like to go through a few chapters that we feel are meaningful to better understand how Iceland got to the point where we're today. We have to realize that this path that we're on is a path that we need to walk jointly, and I really like this African proverb that has been following me for the last decade, that things are better done jointly than separately. But to start with a few definitions. In Ethiopia especially, and in East Africa, now there are multiple industrial parks that are emerging, and these provide certain benefits for the tenants to co-utilize the infrastructure to get a better economic growth for that. But lately, a concept of industrial ecology has emerged where we try to imitate nature's ecosystem to reuse byproducts or waste into a circular economy rather than the typical linear economy that we have been following. This has then resulted in eco parks that have been established widely around the world, where the member businesses seek enhanced economic and environmental performance through the collaboration. One of these eco-industrial park is the Danish Kalundborg Industrial Park, which has proven extremely successful and is actually a tourist attraction at itself. Based on these definitions, then we can see that the spread or the trend, the global trend towards using the eco-industrial park concept is emerging. And based on this, we have the geothermal eco-industrial park concept, where an area is planned to maximize the sustainable use of the geothermal resource. As the visionary of the Reykjavik Geothermal Park, Albert Albertsson, said, that the integrated use of the resource is simply an evidence of common sense. So I hand the word over to Sigurður, who will now go a little bit deeper into why geothermal eco-industrial parks.
Yes, hello everybody. So why are we looking at this integrated solution for geothermal? So geothermal can really be a sustainability driver. The future of geothermal energy really synchronizes well with the future common goal that the global community has, with decreased carbon, increased focus of carbon neutrality, and it can promote build-up of infrastructure and create job creation and support local communities. But how can the geothermal part be increased and strengthened? And I think that if you compare geothermal with other renewables, at least until now, geothermal energy has been lower cost alternative. Of course, that has been rapidly changing with increased solar and wind, but still geothermal has the baseload capacity, so has a really good opportunity to support various industries. It has smaller geographic footprint, but I think the key here is the opportunity that geothermal brings with increased potentials of creating multiple revenue streams and having a strong impact on other opportunities, supporting industries and different types of use of geothermal energy for other possibilities than only electricity production. And so what makes a geothermal project a success? Of course, it has to be, when you have a proven resource, the project you have designed has to be financially viable, and you have to be able to manage the environmental factors to realize the project. And of course, this is always getting harder and harder to get the project through the environmental licensing process. But you also have to have a social license to operate from, and you have to be able to cooperate with the community and I think in many instances that we are seeing in Iceland, that this creating a social license to operate is kind of a key for the project to be realized. And so conventional geothermal operations for electricity production, simple steam flash power plant, is in itself not with a very high efficiency. It's maybe 10 to 20% efficiency. And you see this really well if you look at the picture on the right. This is the energy flow diagram for part of Iceland. This is the northeast of Iceland, and you see where the flow of energy goes into. You see here in the middle for electricity, it goes into industries and utilities. You see the purple where it goes into district heating systems and agriculture and greenhouses. But you see the big blue line which is represents the unused geothermal energy in the area. And we have 2 big geothermal power plants in this area, and this gives you an idea of the excess thermal capacity this type of power plant has. And of course, it's different between different geothermal system, what kind of capacity you has, if it's based on what, you know, what the temperature and pressure of a fluid and so on. But I think in most cases there are really strong opportunities to increase the utilization of such plants. And so for a conventional geothermal business model, you have the normal, just you sell your products to the grid, but by shifting your view to look at the other possibilities of selling heat, selling water, selling electricity directly to industries, and for example, bio-based industries, which are industries that really fits well to geothermal operation. You know, bio-based industries need CO2, they need heat to control the climate, they need water, electricity, and so on to create optimal production conditions. And geothermal is probably the only renewable option that can provide all this in one location. And then you can also look at it as in more integrated way, where you can use the same products to do post-processing or create some kind of eco-industrial model around the resources you have. And this has really been picked up by institutions like IRENA recently, in pointing out the possibilities that geothermal has to accelerate food production. And so I think the shift in the model from conventional electricity production and management of the fluid and release of geothermal gases should be looked at a different way, or at least this is the shift we are seeing in Iceland, is going from creating revenues from many different streams that it's a little bit of lag. Yeah, so you can look at sell your products to industries for space heating. You can extract minerals from the fluid before you re-inject it. One can use the carbon dioxide for various industries, for greenhouses, to create synthetic fuel with electricity and hydrogen made from electricity. And you have other opportunities that we have seen in Iceland. For example, tourism, coupling tourism with geothermal has proven to be really successful, and we see that tourists coming from countries that are not familiar with geothermal find it really an interesting things to see, and I will come better to that later. But so by looking at the geothermal eco-industrial park model, the power companies can extend their business model to many different forms of revenue streams, and from selling electricity to the park and thermal energy, but also to much broader context of renting land to create tourist locations and service such a park with all the things that are done in conventional industrial parks. And for example, one case I can mention is that from Landsvirkjun's point of view, we have been developing this project in Iceland called Bjarnarflag, which is located in northeast Iceland, and we have been designing and planning a 45 megawatt geothermal plant here in the flat area behind this volcanic cone. And the issue here has been both managing of the environmental factors, but also the sort of lack of impact on the society near the project. The reality is that this project would only create maybe around four new jobs directly in the power plant itself. But if we look at what has happened with Landsvirkjun operation in the area, we used one of the wells we have already drilled and has been used for a small geothermal plant nearby. We used it in cooperation with local entrepreneurs and created this spa called Mývatn Nature Baths, which creates now around 40 jobs for the local community and has become one of the most popular tourist destination in the area. So it's not directly the power plant operation or the power project itself that has been creating the jobs and making the impact on the public community, but we have much more potentials in kind of the additional and diverse use of the geothermal fluid that create opportunities. And so Landsvirkjun has been looking from maybe this conventional view of geothermal to much more holistic and diverse model that to include in all our new projects, new designs, to look much more holistically at geothermal as a way to create value for not only the power plant operator, but in bigger context to the local community. And so I think adapting an eco-industrial park model to the conventional geothermal model is kind of a win-win model for all stakeholders. You can, as I talked about earlier, create multiple revenue streams for the power company, and you can create something that you have been a big cost issue, waste management, dealing with pollution. You can turn that into opportunity, and by that you can increase the social acceptance. For the industries, you can create access to renewable energy and create cost benefit for the industrial user. You can create also a ideal working environment for the industrial user, where they have the possibility of sharing resources with other operators and in a way create the same benefits as for the power company with adopting this concept. But for the society, you can also have much stronger impact on the labor market, on quality of life, and new opportunities for the society. So I think that in general, adopting this model will increase the sustainability in general terms of geothermal, and also expand the possibilities developing geothermal has. And this model, and coupled with the circular economy approach, can lower the environmental impact and make them more likely to be accepted. But this requires, to make this really happen and makes this a success, this has to be thought of from the beginning, because taking this into the account in the planning step of a project makes everything much easier. So you won't use the best areas you have. You won't destroy them by crossing them with the power lines or the steam pipes if they would be more suitable for industrial use. You design the plant in a way that you're able to connect users or connect or handle the fluid or the gases in a way that makes it much easier later down the line to work with other companies. So Jón, I hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Sigurður. So if we look at the case of Iceland, of course, Iceland has had a long history of geothermal, the use or direct use of geothermal. In the last few hundred years, we have had this primitive use of geothermal in the forms of bathing and steam bathing and so on and so forth. But in the early 20th century, the industrialization or the real use of the geothermal started. Initially, it started as for the heating purposes of a small village north of Iceland called Mosfellsbær, where they heated up a couple of houses, but then it spread over to the capital city of Reykjavik, which initially was heavily polluted using oil and coal for their heating. But today we have a beautiful, pristine town which is fully heated by geothermal energy. The energy use, as you can see, since the start of electricity generation or harnessing of the geothermal power plant, is that initially we had only about 30% of the energy used was from geothermal resources. Today we are up to 65%. This corresponds to around 5 gigawatts of installed energy if we would take the 160 or 170 petajoules that are currently being used and convert them to gigawatt hours. As you can see also that the increase in energy use has mostly been driven by the geothermal. Initially, there was also hydro, but in the late, the primary energy use in Iceland has been in geothermal. If we then link this increase in geothermal to the productivity, then we can see that there is almost a direct correlation between the gross domestic production and the production of geothermal. This, of course, has led to some serious savings. Instead of being an oil and coal dominated country, we switched over to geothermal, and the current estimates of the 350,000 inhabitants of Iceland is that the annual saving is about $1,600 per capita. So there is an enormous gains of using the full effect of geothermal, not only for electricity, but also for various direct uses. This has been the core foundation in bringing Iceland from being a developing country 30, 40 years back into one of the most prosperous countries in the world today. Yes, of course, this has saved Iceland enormous amounts of foreign currencies, which we had very limited use, and I relate to also in Ethiopia, where we are operating, where that would have an enormous impact. So Sigurður, moving back to you.
Yeah, so the development in Iceland, which first started as using heat for and developed into district heating and then electricity production, has been developing rapidly for the past years. We see that the rapid rise of geothermal utilization in the 90s and the first decade of this century has really sparked kind of new opportunities with geothermal. And we see that there are three main operators in Iceland. We have Landsvirkjun, which operates its plants in a cluster here in the northeast. We have Reykjavik Energy or its subsidiary on Power here in the close to the Reykjavik area, and then we here in the southwest in the Reykjanes Peninsula we have HC Orka. But generally the total electricity use in Iceland is for electricity generation and space heating, but other uses such as swimming pools and fish farming and greenhouses have been growing. But we see that we forecast that the biggest growth we see will be in the industrial use of heat, and because we see that the opportunities that are rising, and especially with increased development toward more sustainability and more sustainability in production of products such as food, the competitiveness of geothermal as a energy provider for certain type of processes will increase, and industries like food production that are based on climate control and certain type of resources will probably become bigger in Iceland. And we see this not only in the environmental factors, but also in the cost factors. If you calculate the cost of heating up 4 hectare greenhouse and you levelize it with the different times it needed to be heated in different countries, if you operate it 365 days of the year, it would cost much less to do it in Iceland, for example, compared to the Netherlands, where you have huge production of fruits and vegetables in greenhouses. And I think the Netherlands is one of at least the biggest exporter of fresh vegetables in Europe. But with the development going from using gas and fossil fuel in this type of production to renewable energy, I see that there will be a shift in the competitiveness, and geothermal will definitely become more competitive in providing energy for such projects. And so if we look at the Icelandic energy companies and what they have been doing, on Power, which operates the Hellisheiði and the Nesjavellir plants in Iceland, have been focusing strongly on all sorts of R&D projects, and they have developed a very interesting concept at the Hellisheiði plant, where they look at the plant as a holistic part of both a district heating system of Reykjavik, and then as a kind of an anchor client in an eco-industrial park, where you can produce a venue for all sorts of businesses that need this type of resources. And then we have maybe the most famous example of the Reykjanes Resource Park, which includes the famous Blue Lagoon. And there, this concept has been taken to many different types of industries. They have of course the Blue Lagoon, but also they have created algae production around it. There's production of renewable methanol. There is fish drying and fish farming, and strong connection with R&D and university that is operating in the area. And then we have Landsvirkjun's operation in Northeast Iceland, and this area is much more remote than the other two areas. So we have started or recently built the Þeistareykir plant, 90 megawatts in the area, and we have a Krafla plant which dates back to 1979, and we are seeing a lot of opportunities in this area that are maybe has to be adapted to the area there, and which applies to all these opportunities. They have to be custom made to different areas, what local industries are in the area, what types of potential employees do you have, what the educational level, what resources do you have in the area, types of agriculture and fisheries and so on. So this is something we are focusing on developing at the moment, and have been discussing with many potential clients. And at the moment we operate the Mývatn nature baths and are working with a cosmetic company. But we look at this as a very interesting future opportunity. And we see that we have that some new interesting industries have risen in Iceland over the past decades. For example, using algae as a way to produce valuable chemicals. This picture is taken from algalif, which produces astaxanthin, which is a powerful antioxidant and used for various types of biotech and agricultural use. We see projects like sorry, it's a little delay. The slide. Okay, we see fish farming projects, and we see, for example, this project here, which is a very high-tech company producing certain protein which they host in this plant, which they grow in a greenhouse next to the Svartsengi plant, and then they extract the protein from the plant to use for cosmetics. Another interesting industry that has been developing next to the Svartsengi plant is the Carbon Recycling International, which use the CO2 from the plant to produce renewable fuel. They produce methanol from the CO2, which can be a renewable alternative to traditional fossil fuel based methanol. And I could give you a few hours talk on all the projects that are going on in Iceland, but there are many interesting and exciting projects, and we see a rapid increase in projects that rely on hosting themselves and working with a geothermal energy and kind of build up on the brand that renewable energy can make. But I think the social factor as well is one of the biggest thing is visible for the normal Icelander. We see that for example, swimming pools, which have become a very integrated part of Icelandic culture. Some Icelanders just always start their day by going to the swimming pool before they go to work to catch up with their friends and hear the newest news and gossip from their friends. And we see that other type of innovative solutions, such as people wouldn't think of Iceland as a location for beach, but we have a heated beach in the Reykjavik, close to central Reykjavik, where the outlet of the district heating system is used for heating up the sea and creating these beach facilities. We have, some of you have heard about the success of the Icelandic national football team, which did very well in the last World Cup. And of course, we from the energy industry in Iceland solely think this to geothermal, because we can heat up during winter time, we can heat up football fields and football halls in a way that we could never do with using other sorts of heating, with for example with electricity directly. And so and taking one example for myself, I used geothermal to I guess to the maximum, if I can say so. I used the outlet of the heating system of my house when I was building it to melt the snow from the parking lot. So geothermal has with time become a really integrated part of to people's life, and we are always finding new and innovative ways to use it to substitute kind of more expensive alternatives. And we have also been seeing some interesting social projects where the power companies and the local municipalities or the government are working together. For example, the Eimur project in the northeast of Iceland, where the municipalities in the area and the power companies are working to create like some sort of a venue for innovators and the local population to work together on finding new ways to increase the impact of geothermal. But I think the real impact is, on the daily life of Icelanders. You create a way that you can live in comfortable conditions in Iceland without the cost to go too high. And so in this sort, you can look at the capital city of Reykjavik as some sort of a early stage eco-industrial park with a volcano in the background, which heat up the whole city and drives the industrial companies with both thermal energy and electricity. And this is not, the only location in the world where this is possible. You have volcanoes all around the world where sitting next to big cities, and which are commonly looked at as a threat or a hazard to the city. So I think the future in Iceland will go from us looking at geothermal power plants as a standalone project and more to kind of a holistic eco-industrial parks. We will see improved energy efficiency with new projects and new focus on innovation and other types of use. We will see geothermal plants becoming carbon neutral by utilizing CO2 for industrial use or re-injection back into the geothermal system. And there will be a strong focus on sustainability, branding, building up brand around these sites, and at least it's my personal opinion that we will see a lot of opportunity rising with the bio-based industries. So Jón, to you.
Yes. So obviously there are a lot of opportunities in East Africa, and having spent over a decade now in East Africa, there are several opportunities. There is no lack of geothermal potential in the world. Africa alone has an estimated or a lower estimate done by Valgarð Stefánsson, an expert from the National Energy Authority in Iceland, that he estimates that there's a low estimate of 23 gigawatts only in Africa. Today, conventional geothermal installed is around 1.2 gigawatts, and that is mostly in Kenya. if we look at specifically at the East African geothermal potential, using Valgarð Stefánsson's methodology, we can calculate our way forward and see that a low or an identified potential could be as much as almost 15.5 gigawatts, while using the extrapolation that a identified resource can be multiplied by 4, then we have an option of reaching almost up to, by 4 to 5, then we can reach up to almost 80 gigawatts. So the potential is there in East Africa. The population growth in East Africa is exponential. It's there are indications that by 2015 we have doubled the population from almost 350 up to almost 700 million. Ethiopia, as you can see, will almost double its population only in the next 30 years. Yet we have a problem where it's identified that still East African and African countries are actually net importers of food and agricultural products. So there is a serious problem that we have to tackle in some way, and I believe that geothermal can be a very strong pillar in reversing this trend. We are currently working on 3 projects in Ethiopia. Reykjavik Geothermal is a part of the Korbetti, Tulumoye, and Abaya project. And during our latest stakeholder engagement in Abaya, as we do for all of the projects, social engagement or understanding what the local community wants is an important role of pushing a project forward. We have multiple examples in East Africa where lack of communication or stakeholder engagement has resulted in hostilities of the local communities towards the project, and thus delaying or even terminating the project. So having this social interaction is extremely important, understanding what is important to the local community. For example, in our Tulumoye projects, where we have just recently started drilling, we have roads that have been upgrading, providing better access from the local communities to the next local market. We have water quality being examined. There are infrastructure upgrades in terms of telecommunication, electronics, even healthcare system. All that benefits the project as well as benefiting the local community. And these quotes here that we have on the screen are actual quotes coming from some of the hundreds and hundreds of people that we invite to the meetings that we discuss with. So the demands or the social awareness in these localities have the desire actually for what we have been mentioning in the earlier slides. You know, there's a farmer who wishes that his local community could be a tourist destination, providing hard-earned foreign currency directly to the local population. There are additional work or job that people are requesting. Water supply, even a farmer, a former soldier, he asks, I mean, what will be the special benefit to my community? I mean, he knows that the light will be shipped maybe to the capital or to the nearest biggest city, but he's providing an access to the resource in his community. So he wants to have, of course, benefits for his community. So, as we've been mentioning earlier, there are multiple local benefits of use, and I've tried to dig into my experience from Ethiopia and East Africa. I mean, what is it? What are the industries that are thriving? Yes, we have cement industries in these areas, which could benefit from geothermal. Drying of all kinds of produce around the Abaya. We have bananas that are being grown. We have melons that are being grown. We have corn and beans. So all this could benefit of a added production or increased value generation of that product. Of course, tourism, the fertilizer and cosmetics, but also a very important attribute to this is the added research or the high-tech jobs that are created at the site. Of course, these are the geothermal. You cannot move the heat hundreds of miles away. You have to build up the local communities, you know, and this potential impacts could be in adding food security to the local job creation, increase the housing facilities to provide housing to the local workforce, or adding an additional healthcare center for these the workers, etc., etc. So it has an enormous effect on the local communities, much more than I would say any other renewable energy source. So for the East African market, we of course have a massive resource, almost 16 gigawatts. There is enormous amount of manpower, both skilled and unskilled. I think that Tulumoy alone has been just for the infrastructure phase that we are now employing 400 of unskilled local workforce. They have sent 40 people out to get further education and on training programs. Massive strength in agriculture. You have an access to a huge market and a good community and between the East African nations. Of course, the local weaknesses are there is no firm legislation in dealing with selling of heat and CO2 and other revenue streams that a geothermal power plant might produce. There's often a lack of infrastructure, and sometimes there is some red tape that we have to deal with. Opportunities, of course, endless, as Sigurður has been mentioning. I think that focusing or having institutions and government understanding the multiple positive effects that a geothermal resource or a geothermal eco-industrial park can have to the community is a vital step on moving forward. So, final thoughts, Sigurður.
So I think that sustainability will be the main driving force over the next decades, and on a local level, I think geothermal can have a huge impact to drive that development. But as I mentioned earlier, it requires the right approach, and it requires the geothermal community to kind of fight for, you know, adoption of geothermal into the country-wide approach to sustainable development, and geothermal to be recognized as a valuable renewable energy option, and we have to look at ways to for the local laws to adapt to this opportunity and take into account things like direct connection to a power plant instead of to the energy grid, regulations around the geothermal fluid, how it is handled. Is it a hazardous pollution, or is it, how do you handle the environment around that? And we have to create rules and regulations that promote the use of this resource and promote systems thinking and circular economy approach, because that we will all win by doing that. So any final thoughts, Jón?
Well, I think this leads very well into the next session, which will, to my understanding, and Derek and Jake, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the next session we will be talking about the legislation and regulations around the eco-industrial park. So I think that's a nice transition. Me and Sigurður, we will be back then on the third lecture, and we will then discuss a little bit more on the business case of the geothermal eco-industrial park.
Yes, Jón, thank you, Jón and Sigurður. Thank you very much for those presentations. I think I can speak for myself. I really enjoyed hearing about how Iceland has been able to develop their geothermal industrial parks. I also thank you for plugging the next few in our series. Since we're talking about it now, I'll let you know we do have another webinar in this series on September 16th that will discuss the regulatory aspects, and then we'll have another one probably 2 or 3 weeks after that with Sigurður and Jón coming back again. So thank you. Addition to that, we have another set of webinars that are coming out that will discuss new technology in geothermal. So we have someone coming on to talk about a geothermal solar hybrid that will be on September 29th. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're on our mailing list. If you received a mailer for this, you're already on it. But if not, feel free to email me at dburke@usca.org, and I will get you on that list. If you have time, Jón, I think Jón and Sigurður, we have a few questions. Could we ask those for maybe 10-15 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, great. I think the first question we got here from Jeffrey Humber, Phil Harms, I'm sorry. In your experience, how do you start the industrial parks? Does it start with the geothermal power plant, or should you start with the industrial parks, getting the companies that will be involved, or how do you bring all the stakeholders together to start the project?
Should I take this, Jón?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah. At least based on my experience, it will probably, in most occasions, start with a geothermal project, and the geothermal project will be kind of the anchor client in the park, and will be kind of the reason for the industrial park to develop there. But I think what triggers the development often is kind of the vision and of both the vision of the power company and the dialogue with the local communities. And of course, it depends between countries how much influence the local community has on the licensing process and how kind of dynamic the dialogue between the power company and the local community is. And also it could start with kind of the vision of the power company to look at geothermal in much broader sense, but I think in Iceland it has developed more in the kind of the dialogue between the community and the power company constantly trying to improve their operation and improve their cooperation and support with the community. But I think in the end, this is better business for the power company.
Great, thank you very much. To that question about the community involvement within the industrial park, we have a question from Abdik from OGED from Djibouti. He asked about the developers of the private developers that come in to run the businesses in the industrial parks. Do you see those as being local from Ethiopia, or do you think those are private companies that have the experience from Iceland that will come in and develop those industries?
I think that the hope is always that that the local community knows best. What I'm trying to say is that the development in Iceland leading to these geothermal industrial parks is because there was a local need, a fishing industry that needed to dry its cod heads before exporting them. So I really hope that there will be, as Sigurður mentioned, an anchor tenant to the industrial park concept, but that the power plants that the developers, they look towards engaging the community in workshops, in trying to find innovative solutions or ways to try to engage the local entrepreneurship, whether that is in Ethiopia or in Djibouti or Eritrea or Kenya. I think having an external company coming from Iceland to Ethiopia wouldn't try to maybe implement something that they have, not rather than implement something that the local community can see, or a new idea that is spurred. So I would always try to promote local involvement.
Yeah, I agree. I think the local involvement is the only way you're going to have a successful project, especially in my experience as well. So we have one question from Jude Moore from the Center for Global Development. He says, one of the issues with geothermal is the massive upfront costs, and sites tend to be remote, requiring heavy investment. Across Africa, debt is an issue now after borrowing to build infrastructure. What do you suggest about the financing for these industrial parks? How can financing go forward?
Sorry, there was a slight delay on your question. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I can repeat. So geothermals often has a massive upfront costs, and the sites tend to be very remote, requiring large investment. So across Africa, debt is an issue now after borrowing for major infrastructure projects. What suggestions do you have for financing such projects as the geothermal eco-industrial parks?
So I think, having worked in this space, I think it is, when you look towards a project as Sigurður and we have mentioned earlier, and when you can have a project that has multiple revenue streams, rather than focusing on one revenue stream, at the same time providing a massive social impact, that of course leads to more attractive, a more attractive project. Yes, it is currently hard to finance projects that are very remote and in areas that have a limited input of international funding. But for our projects in Ethiopia, both for Korbetti and Tulumoye, we have successfully managed to fund these projects and fund them quite well. There are a waiting list of debt that want to come into these projects once the research has been proven, and these debt providers are usually extremely focused on the local and social impact that these projects will have. So having a strategy, a community development program, I would say would only help the project moving. Would you agree on this?
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of delay on my connection here. So
I think that hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think it does. I think we're all trying to figure out how to get financing to work in Africa. So with that, I think we're a little bit over 10 o'clock. We plan to just have it for an hour. I think we'll go ahead and end the webinar here. So thank you very much for joining us in this initial webinar for establishing geothermal industrial parks in East Africa. I hope you enjoyed learning about this exciting topic, and I would like to thank our wonderful speakers for taking the time today to share their knowledge. As I said before, please be on the lookout for the registration for the next webinars in this series. That will be on September 16th, which will discuss the regulatory issues surrounding geothermal industrial parks. And again, we will have another geothermal webinar series talking about a solar geothermal hybrid on September 26th. If you are not already on our mailing list, please send me an email at dburke@usea.org, and I will put you on that, so you will receive all the updates on all EAGP activities. So thank you, Sigurður and Jón, and thank you everyone for coming in and being a part of our webinar today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.